providers of T-level health. So you're one of the Wave 1 original providers. What were the kind of the first steps that the college took to prepare to get ready, or any of the Wave 1 providers had to take to prepare to teach T-level health?
I think it was thinking about staffing, so a skills inventory of your staff to make sure that you had the necessary skill set, because delivery was very different to what you'd maybe delivered in the past. So a lot of places, including mine, we were delivering health and social care programmes, but actually the T-level requires a different skill set and a different background. So it was about upskilling staff, add more staff to your team if that's what you needed, and then I suppose thinking about the equipment, because obviously you need quite a lot of specialist equipment for the delivery of the T-levels, so thinking about, you know, how you were going to source the equipment, where you were going to put the equipment, how you would set it up, getting industry input, because that's really important. It's no good having a lot of sort of industry related equipment if you don't know how to use it and you don't know what the setup would look like. So I suppose that was kind of the starting point.
So when the college started teaching, it looked very different. You weren't in this building.
No, so we at that time they were over in the old building, and although the facilities are quite good, in comparison to maybe some other smaller colleges, they were nothing like this, and this is, you know, much better.
So I guess one of the things for colleges to bear in mind is that your starting point isn't necessarily where you're going to be 4 years later, like you guys are.
Absolutely not, because we're still not where we want to be yet. You know, we've got some great equipment, we've got some great facilities, we've got fantastic staff, but it's about making sure the staff stay upskilled, and it's also about the little tweaks and things that make it more industry relevant. So we're not where we need to be yet, but we'll get there.
So what occupational specialisms do you deliver here?
We deliver the midwifery pathway, mental health, adult nursing, or lab science as well.
Yeah.
And did you start with those all at the same time, or have you brought them on?
No, so we started with adult nursing, then added midwifery, and then just this year we've added mental health.
And what sort of challenges has that posed as you bring on the new specialisms?
I think probably in terms of midwifery, it's the specialist equipment, making sure that so that's going to be quite a big investment to make sure we've got the equipment that we need. And I suppose with mental health, it's about making sure that we have mental health specialists on the team, to make sure that the delivery is relevant. And also, I think placements, Emma, would you say?
Placement's a big one, especially for the midwifery students, making sure it's relevant to their pathway. So for year 1, when they're all kind of studying that core health, I suppose the basic health skills they would develop on placement are great, but we want them to be able to go into year 2 and have a little bit more awareness of working with kind of mothers and babies, really.
Yeah. So we've been working quite closely with NHS Trust to get them into, and I think I was talking about it earlier, to get them into midwifery services, so not necessarily on the ward with delivery, but all of the other associated services around that. So that's what we're hoping for going forward.
Yeah. Would you say the level of skill that the team have got, because you've said about having different skill sets for different specialisms, is that one of the really key things you need to consider when you start? Absolutely.
So we've got a very varied team. We're very lucky. We've got an adult nurse on staff. We've got 2 midwives, of which Rachel's one. We've got Emma, who's operating department leader, trained as well. So we've got a really good vocational background, I suppose, in terms of the delivery team.
I think with that we can also kind of support each other in terms of the delivery from our own skills. So we've all kind of became specialised in different areas, but that cross between those pathways, we can kind of support each other in how we deliver that in the different hospital environments that we've kind of worked in, whether it was community or the hospital itself.
And Rachel was just telling me there that she's at work on Saturday as well. So she's still working as a midwife, and I think that's quite important as well, to make sure. She was just talking about the fact that, you know, making sure that she's up to date with everything that's happening in the sector, and I think that's
policies and that's important stuff that we are teaching them. So if we can give them the most up-to-date information for them to obviously go out into placements and things with, that's a benefit, isn't it? So,
and it's a very, very cohesive team, as Emma said. We work really closely together, and I think that's essential to make sure that we are, you know, utilising everybody's specialisms on the team. Nobody's an expert at everything, but by the time we put the whole team together, we're pretty well covered, and we're very, very lucky in that respect.
So in terms of timetabling the 2 different year groups and the specialisms, do you kind of split things along the specialisms of the team members that you've got as to who teachers want?
Yeah, we do. So we would have that delivery, and I think I was talking to you earlier about the fact that we've got science teachers delivering science, but we also have Rachel delivering some of the science as well. And I think that combination of a science expert from a science route and then Rachel science from a midwifery background, they get a much better sort of understanding of science in relation to health rather than just science as a standalone.
And I think with the timetabling as well, especially depending on the size of the cohort, it's quite good to have them on placement days on different days, just because of us having a small amount of employers that we can utilise for them. So at least that means there's only a small group going out on those days, meaning we can cover our teaching on the days that different groups are in college.
So with your timetabling, have you over the 4 years kind of changed the structure of the timetable as you've learnt more about the course?
Yeah, I would say that the timetable's definitely changed. As I was saying earlier, we timetable things a little bit differently this year. So for example, on we've got 4 first year groups, and I've been teaching purely ESP related skills. That's something we haven't done before, but we felt would be a benefit. So we're always evolving, and we're thinking about, we talk to each other all the time, get a lot of input from staff in terms of how things are working, from the students as well. We talk to the students about how things are working. A lot of our students also work, so as well as having their industry placement, they might work as well, and we're also very mindful of that, especially in the current economic climate. We're very careful about making sure we can meet the needs of our students going forward. So timetabling has to consider a lot of factors.
Yes, so in terms of how you timetable the spaces that you've got, because on the tour you've shown lab spaces and ward spaces and classrooms, how do you kind of manage that?
And we try to make sure that they've got a bit of everything. So in our first year they'll have a little bit of practical, they'll have classroom time, they'll have computer time as well, so that the delivery is a good mix of things and allows their skill development, because the skill development is so essential for this course. You can't just deliver the theory and expect them to be successful. The skill has to be interwoven through everything. Whereas in the second year, they would have more time in the practical areas, so they'd have more time on the ward, for the nature of the delivery for the second year.
And do you find that it is more practical in the second year than it is to the first year?
Yeah. I think it's because the second year is the occupational specialism, isn't it? So there's very few practicals I think you can do that all kind of across the board cover the health for first year. Whereas obviously second year with the occupational specialisms, you can delve into some of those skills that they're actually going to see and use in placement areas or workplaces once they obviously move on from here. So I think it is definitely easier to kind of plan those practicals around the specialism that they've chosen. So
I think in the first year it's more about establishing the behaviours that we expect on the ward.
And the basic skills like communication and
So we talked a little bit about the placements and the fact that students have got to have placements for T-level. What are some of the challenges that you face locally here in terms of working with local employers?
I think the amount of employers that have an awareness of the T-level. So last year a lot of my work was just kind of spreading the word about what it is and the purpose of it really. With a lot of local GP practices, I was trying to explain that they're investing in a T-level student and potentially in the future that could be a practice nurse who works for them. Because I think there was a little bit of confusion because sometimes they're on the adult nursing specialism, they thought they were an adult nurse from a university, so it's really giving them the right information about what the T-level is. Another challenge is the age, so some employers such as care homes won't accept students that are under 18. Obviously the nature of the T-level, they're all under 18, so trying to find employers that will accept students under 18, if not just really working with the employers to get that awareness out there and seeing how we can work together. Some of them initially weren't sure if they would take an under 18 student until I've been out, spoken to them, explained really what we're expecting the students to be able to be exposed to, and then after that they did accept them, and most of our placements have been very successful. Some of the students have even gained employment from domiciliary care companies, and which is great because that means, talking about what we mentioned before, the current climate, they're getting paid, but it also counts towards their placement hours as well.
We should probably say that Emma was our placement officer last
Yeah.
year, so now she's lecturing. She doesn't do that, although there have been helping out with that role, but that was her role last year, so she knows a lot about it.
I think one of the other things as well, just going back to what you'd mentioned before, is about the relevance of the placement. I think as the cohorts are getting bigger, it is getting harder to find a placement that seems relevant to the occupational specialism. So we're really trying to find placement areas where they're going to use the skills that we ideally want them to work on and want them to use. But it is getting a little bit harder, I think, isn't it, as the cohorts are getting bigger. Just because of obviously numbers that they have to be able to facilitate students on placement and things as well. So
with that as well, I think in year one, because they can have 2 placements overall, in year one trying to find them maybe a placement that's giving them all those core basic skills, and then finding them something in year 2 that is specific to the specialism. So that's worked in some of the students we've currently got, and then it means it frees up those placements for the current year one, so it's kind of just constantly transitioning the employers between all of the students.
And do you find that if you can build up good relationships with local employers, now you've had students go through, you're getting that kind of positive feedback that makes them want to take students on in future years?
Yeah, absolutely essential. I was talking about Kathy from the NHS earlier and how fantastic she's been in her role, and made such a difference, I think, to us and in the students' transition into the industry placement, hasn't she?
Definitely.
So for any colleges that are watching with us and are basically faced with a blank space, what sort of teaching spaces and learning environments do you think they need to consider, even if they're just getting started, to almost like, if anything is possible?
I think probably obviously you need the practical, and at the moment if you're just getting ready, that's probably what you're focused on, and you'll be really thinking about the practical spaces that you need, and they are absolutely essential, don't get me wrong, but you also need to really think about access to IT. You know, if you're preparing students for employer-set project, they need to learn to research. You need to have classrooms that can facilitate that. And you need space for lots of group work, because we do a lot of group work and a lot of scenario-based teaching, and your classrooms need to be set up really to help you deliver that. And breakout areas. I always love a good breakout area, don't they, to go and do some independent work on a task that you might have set.
And you've already said, you've got great space here, but you're not finished yet. You're developing all the time. What are the kind of areas that you're wanting to develop here?
Well, we're looking at. I think I said earlier, we're looking at our midwifery. We'd love a birthing pool. We've got a room picked out. We're also looking at developing sort of clinic space as well, and we also need to think about what do we need for our mental health students going forward, because I'd like to see that specialism grow as well, and at the moment it's quite small. We're only in year one, but we are going to start thinking about what do we need going forward. And we also run counselling here, which is not T-level related, but there is that progression for some of our students going through into things like counselling. So it's thinking about progression routes for our students that maybe are not just, most of them go to adult nursing from the adult nursing course, but not all do. Some go to paramedics, some go to various other things, and sometimes students don't always know what they want to do at that point, because we've got to remember they're 16, and although they're choosing a specialism, it doesn't mean they'll stay in that specialism. So I think we also have to be prepared to discuss various professions in the sector, because they usually stay in the sector, but they might look at other things, and it's always thinking ahead about what else can we do with them, how can we promote choice for them really, and educate them on what's out there, because that's so important for young people to know that there are so many different jobs they can go into in the health sector alone, isn't there? Yeah. And obviously we know that there are masses of vacancies at the moment, so it's really good growth area.
So you saying earlier on that you have taught on other level 3 health courses before. What would you say are some of the major differences or some of the major obstacles to get around when you're teaching T-level health, and how different it is to other level 3 courses?
I really think a lot of health and social care courses traditionally have been delivered by people who aren't industry experts. I think it's very, very difficult on a T-level route to deliver if you haven't worked in the sector. And not necessarily, not necessarily of a nursing background. Even if you've got people who've worked as healthcare assistants, they can be very, very successful in teaching as well, but I do think you need to have some experience of being actually in industry, because I think if you don't and you're in the classroom trying to deliver the theory, there isn't the depth of understanding, and if you haven't got the depth of understanding, you can't hope to pass it on to your students.
I think the students really enjoy our examples from being
Yeah.
in practice as well, and sometimes we might deliver something and it might not really fully make sense to them, but then if we bring in our examples of how we've actually followed that in practice, for example the 6 C's, the students really, it kind of embeds it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And also because we've came from clinical roles, when we're doing practicals, even our experiences of doing that with a patient, we can kind of talk the students through that a little bit more, which makes it easier for us, because really all we're doing is simulating what we did in our role, and it's easier for the students to understand it that way, and for us to show them the best practice in techniques and things like that.
And the students also will tell you about things that they've maybe done. So when I have them, as I say, I have all the first year groups, and they'll tell me about different things they've done, and they particularly like telling me about different scenarios that staff have told them about, things that have happened in the real world, and those kind of examples really stick in the head. Very useful.
Would you say that T-level health is a more in-depth course in comparison to other?
Absolutely, I would. It definitely is. It's very challenging. It's a very challenging programme. I always say it's a bit like doing 3 A-levels plus an apprenticeship alongside, but it does give them they're very well prepared for next steps when they go out the door, but it is challenging. It's a big leap for students coming in at 16, but we see massive growth holistically in the student over the 2 years that they're with us, don't we? And then when they come back to visit us, if they're in their first year at university or if they're in work, it's just lovely to see how mature they are and how skilled they are.
And are you seeing from students that are at university already that actually they've almost got an advantage because they've been doing
Absolutely. We had a couple of students in who had done the adult nursing specialism here with us, and they're in the first year of nursing now, and they were talking about the fact that it was a breeze because it's everything they've already done, so they're like, oh, we're so well prepared and we've definitely got an advantage. But actually what that does is really develop their confidence. They're really confident young people, and it's lovely to see them out there being successful in what they do.
I do try and tell the first years that as well, because it's such a big jump to go from, especially the science, that like the anatomy and physiology behind it, and it's such a big jump to go from that GCSE to then the T level, and the depth that is in the T level in terms of the science that they need to know, and they notice that they often will say, I don't know, I don't understand, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing, and it's just that I think they get the fear that they're expected to know so much and to do so much and apply so much. And I will say to them, by the time you get to university, you will be steps ahead of anybody else in your cohort because of the knowledge that you get from this. But at the minute, I absolutely understand it seems like so much. So it is, I've noticed I've really had to start chunking things and not maybe putting a lot of the specification into too many lessons too soon, because it does get a little bit overwhelming for them, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and we should also say that it's Rachel's first year in teaching, so she's doing a fabulous job, but obviously
I'm also slightly overwhelmed.
Yeah, of course she is, because I mean I can't think of anything more challenging than your first year of teaching actually being delivering T levels. But so far she's still standing and doing a great job, but she's learning lots as well, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, loads.
It sounds like you've got like a really supportive team here, and that even when you're new to teaching, you've got lots of support. For anybody who's in a situation where it might just be them and another colleague, what would you say to them about like avenues perhaps that you've gone down externally to go and get help and support?
I would say reach out to the exam board, but I think one of the things that I've found really useful is talking to other colleges. So talking to other colleges who maybe are a little bit in front of you, so that you can gain from their experience and they can tell you kind of the pitfalls, because we all make mistakes when we set things up. We all change things as we go along, and maybe you can avoid those by just talking to somebody who's already a little bit in front of you. And generally as teachers, we're all very generous with our time and our resources, and I think if you reach out to somebody else in another college, you'll be pleasantly surprised by how willing they are to help.
So in year one of the sort of main things that you're working towards with the students is the employer set project. What kind of things are you doing here to prepare the students for that?
Basically, making sure that they understand it obviously it's to do with core A, and Emma's delivering most of that. And are you doing some core A as well, I think? aren't you?
I do one session. I do
so she's doing core A as well. But the
predominantly.
employer set project, although it kind of interweaves into everything that you're doing, making sure that they're really confident in research, that they know how to reference. For some reason, young people really struggle to learn to reference, and it's something I've noticed over a long period of time. So we've spent a lot of time researching, referencing. They do role plays, they do presentations, they look at case studies, past case studies that have been part of the ESP. They think about applying their skills, they develop their communication skills. So everything that they're going to they're going to be assessed on in the employer set project, we're making sure that they have the opportunities to really practice those skills. And it's, although it is interwoven through the whole course, I think having a session that is purely around the development of those skills has been really useful so far. So it would be interesting to see how this cohort perform in comparison to what we've had in the past, because we're doing things a little bit differently.
And then how do you manage the logistics of the employer set projects? A lot of colleges say that is one of the biggest challenges that they face.
Well, that's why we all look pretty tired at the moment. But it's very, very challenging, and we've actually just set up a task and finish group that we're going to have a look at the ESP and look at different ways of delivery, because at the moment it's very reliant on my team. And as I've said earlier, we're trying to keep our second years going ahead as well at the same time while we're delivering ESP, and it's very, very complicated. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of thinking about how you do it, and I don't think we're where we want to be yet in terms of delivery. So we've done it probably the same way, and now we're looking at delivery in a little bit of a different fashion, and we're going to get additional staffing in when it comes to the ESP to get some support. And we're also, because it's very staff intense, because you depend on the scenario, you've got to have people playing patience. I think last time we had 3 rooms set up with 3 cameras, and it still took, I think, two or three solid days just to do the role play and the PowerPoint presentation. So it is very staff and heavy, and I think that's probably something you need to start thinking about now. If you're thinking about delivery from September, or if you're already in that, you need to start thinking about it now and planning, and don't underestimate the amount of time it will take for each student to go through every element.
And how do you balance that with the year 2 assessments? Because equally that's quite intensive as well.
I think that's probably more intensive, if I'm honest. I'm not really sure how we balance it at the moment, if I'm totally honest. It is incredibly challenging. We're not where I would like us to be in terms of managing the assessments, and there's still quite a lot of work to do there. So at the moment we're really focused on sorting out the ESP and thinking about how are we delivering that. Once we've finished with that, we'll move on and think about how are we delivering for how are we running the assessments for the specialism. But there is no doubt in my mind that we need additional staffing over those assessment periods. We can't run just with our team.
So in terms of the setup that you've got in the wards, how do you kind of manage the equipment that you've got here? Do you have people that can come to help you, or is it your responsibility to be almost cleaning things down and maintaining everything?
It's ours, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we do the majority of it,
Yeah, they do the majority of it at the moment. And again, we've been in talks about having a technician attached to our area, because sometimes, we were looking in the igloo, it's a lot for staff to set things up, even with things like the sim next door. I really feel like to get the best out of the equipment we've got, we need a technician to support. So we're in process of trying to get a technician who will just be attached to our school, so that staff can utilise things more than they are at the moment. Because sometimes I think there's lessons that you would like to do and don't always have time to set up. So I want to make sure that they can do that whenever they feel the need. So that's what we're in the process of doing. So if you've got a wish list, whoever's listening, I think a technician should be high on that list, alongside making sure that you've got IT support as well.
And when you've got equipment in, how important is staff training to be able to understand how to use everything?
really, really important, isn't it? And you have to remember that it needs to be revisited as well, because I think a lot of the times you get stuck in using a piece of equipment in a specific way because you just haven't had time to think about what else can I do. So I think it's important that you revisit those training sessions as much as you can to keep up to date, and also to give you an opportunity to think about how you might want to use something differently.
When the students are in here, I know earlier on in the tour you said that they have to come in dressed appropriately, and once they're in here, it's in that professional role. Are they given responsibilities in here to be looking after things?
Yeah, we give expectations, don't we, of appropriately using the equipment. So things like not sitting on the beds, leaning on the beds. We would expect them to behave in here how we would expect them to behave on placement, where potential future employers are watching them and kind of observing their skills and their communication, and so we expect those same expectations in here realistically.
And we do expect them, if they're coming in to use the equipment, we expect them to tidy up after themselves
absolutely.
and leave the place tidy. That's something that we work on quite hard with
Yeah.
them. So, yeah.
And you've got quite a lot of equipment out, you've got other pieces of equipment. How important is thinking about storage and areas to put things when people are considering their spaces from the very beginning?
Really important.
Yeah.
In terms of storage, we have got some. I don't think we've got enough, if I'm totally honest. So I think thinking about that, if you're just designing somewhere, I would definitely think about storage and making sure that you have got somewhere to put stuff away safely. Anything that could be a danger is locked up in here, obviously, and it's also locked. The ward is locked. You can only get in with a fob. So we, in a lot of places, you don't have that. So we're quite lucky in that this is a secure place anyway. People can't just come in and go. So I suppose storage is not as big a deal as it could be if we didn't have that.
I think another suggestion, if anyone's kind of developing a ward, like you were saying there, I think lockers are a good idea for the students when they're on the ward, because the university I went to, in our clinical setting, we had lockers, so there was no like bags or anything like that. And especially if your ward is going to be a little bit of a smaller space, even if you've got 10 students, trying to get them to store their bags somewhere where it's safe so no one's going to trip or anything like that. If you've got lockers for them, it just means it's tidy, keeps it looking clinical as well, and realistic, because if they're on placement or in a hospital ward, no staff have their bags with them on the ward, so it just kind of maintains that clinical look for the environment overall.
And out of all the kind of equipment that you've got here, or anything that's on the product list, is there anything in particular that you think is really impactful in your teaching that you would advise anybody, like, if I could have just one or two things, these are the things that I'd really want to have?
I think the responsive mannequin, the sim, I think that's brilliant, and we probably could use it to even more of an advantage is what we do now. But with that, you can kind of, I like to sometimes, if we're doing a news charts or anything like that, set different readings for blood pressure and get the students really involved in figuring out what's actually wrong with that patient. And you can do all sorts with that, because you can, for year 2, even catheterize the mannequin. So it's one piece of equipment that you can actually use for multiple clinical tasks. So I think that's something that is great, because you're not having to buy various different pieces of equipment to do various tasks with them. Maybe what else? I think another good thing is just your basic kind of blood pressure,
just the standard sort of basic skills.
SATs probes, so like the oxygen saturation monitors for
thermometers and
just those basic pieces of equipment to build up that those skills,
really,
and then when we do role playing things, they can practice on each other and really understand how to place the blood pressure cuff in the correct area, but also maintain the patient's dignity, ask for consent. So it all kind of ties into those other modules. And I think those two things, so the sim and the basic physiological measurement equipment, tie in very well together, and a great starting point for equipment.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And you've got wards, and you've got the igloo, the interactive space. Do you feel that the more immersive spaces that you've got really help the students, not only in terms of their development on the course, but preparing them to go out into placement as well?
Oh, absolutely it does. I don't really think you could prepare them well for placement without having, because NHS, if you're sending a student out to the NHS and they're on a ward, it is a busy place. at least if they go from here, they've got the basics, they understand what's expected of them, they understand what the equipment looks like, they understand the limitations of their role as well, which I have to say is really, really important when you're sending young people out. And they know what to do to keep themselves safe, and you know, we couldn't do that without the facilities we've got.
We said earlier on about expanding and about wish lists. What would be your top thing on a wish list, either practical equipment or something that you would like changing about the course?
In terms of changing about the course, if for me, I do believe that although we've had some improvements with assessments, I do believe we're not where we need to be. And I think really we need our assessments to marry up more with the curriculum that we deliver. We need to think carefully about the level of curriculum we deliver. And if I had one thing to say, probably to the exam board, I would say speak to the teachers who actually deliver the content. They are your best resource in terms of making sure your assessments are fit for purpose.
Wish list, what would be the other thing?
For me personally, I would love if we do manage to source a birthing pool, but also a birthing doll. I would love I would love a birthing mannequin, so that we can do we can do some more practicals with the.
Don't worry, she's already on the list. What about you, Emma? Is there anything you would want?
I'm not quite sure at the moment actually. Because I'm obviously I'm not a midwifery specialist, so I'm doing more of the adult nursing side, so I feel like the equipment we've got is brilliant for that. I think I'm just going to go with Rachel, and I'll be wishing for your responsive mannequin that gives birth.
She'll definitely be covered.
And come and watch when we do it.
Obviously we ran adult nursing first, so we're quite well resourced for adult nursing, but we have got a massive list for midwifery. And that's in process of being ordered now, so it'll be long.
And so for anybody who's watching who they're just about to start, or they're in their first year and they're quite nervous about delivering, what are your top things to say to them that they could put in place that's really going to kind of help them in that first year of delivery?
I think for me, kind of the resources or planning kind of every week. So something that's really helped me prepare is that I've planned exactly which module I'm teaching at each time of the year right up until the end of the year, knowing that I can tie in the practical elements when it's relevant. So organisation I think is key, just to kind of take that little bit of extra stress off, and walk into your classroom knowing that you've prepared for that lesson, and then you feel confident. But also remember that you're the specialist, you've kind of came from that clinical background, and the students are really excited to hear your side of things, so just be confident in yourself with that.
I was going to say exactly the same in terms of organisation. The other thing that I think I'm really trying, I'm not going to say that I do it yet, but I'm really trying to, is not getting hung up on the things that I don't manage to do, because there are days where I will go home with half of my to-do list still waiting for me to do it, and I just have to remember that I can't do it all. What I've done for that day is enough. There is nothing that's going to happen with that to-do list that if it waits till tomorrow or Monday, so I am really trying not to be so task focused and kind of beat myself up, I suppose, by not ticking all those boxes off, because they don't need to be ticked.
I think it's learning to prioritise the things that you do definitely have to do, and the things that actually can take a back seat, because you also have to look after your own well-being. That's really important. But I think one of the things I would say is really important in thinking about your delivery is your formative assessment. So all the way through your delivery, it's about thinking what do the students know, how much are they learning, what do I need to revisit, because you can guarantee that in your classroom you will have some people that are flying ahead, but we also have to be very aware of our students who maybe need to revisit things a little more often. We maybe need to think about adapting our teaching in a way that's better for them. So getting to know your students really well is key, and making sure that they're having regular formative assessment, so you've got a picture of how they're developing.
And so finally, is there a moment in your own T-level journey so far that has made you feel really proud?
There certainly is for me. I think the first year of T-level delivery, as everybody will know, was a little bit of a disaster in terms of the assessment, and I think my proudest moment is probably keeping all of those students on board, getting them through to resit and seeing them go off to university. That was a fantastic experience. I was so proud of how resilient they were. For me, that's been the highlight probably of my career. Horrible at the time when it happened, but the success that those learners had when they went off was really special.
I think another one is we took, currently they're the second year cohort, but we took them at the end of last year to one of the local universities for a look around, and the lecturer and staff there were questioning them on, they were kind of questioning them on things that would be asked at their interview, and listening to all of those students be so confident in their response to the questions, and talking about kind of the core values of the NHS. And I think it's nice to really see that the students have understood kind of what they've been taught, and the university were very, very impressed. So again, that's another example of the students are learning things as part of the T-level that is going to support them in that first year of university.
I think for me, I am focusing at the minute on the little wins. So I think when I do a session and they get it and they learn something and they go away, they've been able to answer every question on the quiz at the end, or they've managed to ask questions to each other and answer them themselves, and so it's all those little wins I think that make me proud, in terms of just because it's so new to me as well. Obviously I don't have any teaching background, so for me, when they do learn things and they take things away and they've enjoyed learning it, I think that is like quite a proud moment for me, but then also for them as well, because I know that eventually that's going to set them up in either an employment going forward or education going forward. So yeah.